She deserves it more than you. My mother's words hung in the air of our living room, sharp and final. I stared at the bank statement in my hands, the numbers blurring as I tried to process what I was seeing. My college fund, $180,000 that my biological father had left for me before he passed, had been completely drained. My name is Emma Mitchell, and at 23, I was watching my mother and stepsister destroy everything my father had worked to build for me. The worst part? They didn't even try to hide their satisfaction. Harvard Law isn't cheap, Ashley said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. And let's be honest, Emma, you're just working at that little tech startup. It's not like you were going to use the money for anything important. I looked at my mother, searching for any sign of the woman who'd once supported my dreams. Instead, I found only the carefully crafted mask she'd worn since marrying Ashley's father 3 years ago. Your father would have wanted the money to be put to good use, she said, smoothing her designer blouse. Ashley has real potential. She's going to be somebody. The irony of her statement almost made me laugh. If only they knew what that little tech startup really was, or what I'd been building for the past 2 years. But I'd learned long ago to keep my cards close to my chest, especially around my family. You're right, I said quietly, folding the bank statement and slipping it into my bag. Congratulations, Ashley. I hope Harvard is everything you've dreamed of. My calm response seemed to unsettle them both. They'd expected tears, probably a fight. That's how it usually went. Ashley would take something of mine, our mother would defend her, and I would eventually give in. But not this time. That's it? Ashley asked, her perfectly shaped eyebrows drawing together in confusion. You're not going to throw a fit. I stood up, shouldering my bag. What's done is done. I have to get back to work. See? My mother said to Ashley, though her eyes never left me. I told you she'd understand. She knows this is for the best. As I drove back to my apartment, my hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The memory of how I discovered their betrayal played on repeat in my mind. It had been a routine check of my accounts that morning. I'd been planning to make a significant investment in my company's new project, using the money my father had left me. He'd been a brilliant software engineer, and the fund wasn't just about college. It was his way of ensuring I could pursue my dreams without financial constraints. The account was empty. One phone call to the bank revealed that my mother, who'd been a cosigner since I was a minor, had transferred everything to a new account 2 days ago. When I confronted her, she'd invited me over for what turned out to be an ambush, with Ashley there to twist the knife. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my best friend and business partner. Did you talk to them? What happened? I pulled into my parking spot and took a deep breath before responding. They gave it all to Ashley, for Harvard Law. His response was immediate. What? Are you okay? Want me to come over? No, stay at the office. I'm heading back now. We need to finish the prototype. I looked up at my apartment building, not the luxury high-rise where my mother and Ashley lived, but a modest complex where most of my neighbors were other young entrepreneurs and tech workers. They thought I lived here because I couldn't afford better. They had no idea I owned the entire building. That night, I sat at my desk, finalizing the code for what would become either my greatest achievement or my biggest failure. The prototype was nearly complete, a revolutionary security software that could change how companies protected their data. 2 years of work, countless sleepless nights, and every penny of my savings had gone into this project. My father would have understood. He taught me my first programming language when I was 8, showed me how to build my first computer at 10. Never let anyone tell you what you can or can't achieve, Emmy, he'd say. Just smile, nod, and prove them wrong. My phone buzzed again. A group text from my mother to the entire family. Celebration dinner this Saturday, commemorating Ashley's acceptance to Harvard Law and the start of her brilliant future. Attendance mandatory. Below it, Ashley had added, Thanks again, Mom, for believing in me. This wouldn't be possible without you guys supporting my dreams. I set my phone down and turned back to my computer screen. The code I'd been working on blinked steadily, waiting for the final touches. 2 more weeks. That's all I needed. Hey, Jake, I called out to my partner, who was still working at his desk across the room. How close are we to the investor meeting? Everything's set, he replied, looking up from his screen. They're flying in next Friday. You sure you don't want to postpone after what happened with the fund? I shook my head, a small smile playing at my lips. No, in fact, I think the timing is perfect. Send out the invitations to the demonstration. And Jake, make sure my mother and Ashley get one. After all, they're so interested in supporting dreams. The week leading up to Ashley's celebration dinner was a blur of coding, testing, and final preparations. Our small team worked around the clock, fueled by energy drinks and determination. The prototype was coming together better than we'd hoped, and the initial security tests were exceeding expectations. Thursday night, I received another text from my mother. Don't forget, dinner tomorrow at La Maison at 7. Dress appropriately. The Dean of Harvard Law will be joining us. I smiled at my reflection in the computer screen. Of course, Ashley had managed to get the dean to attend. My stepsister had always excelled at networking, at playing the perfect daughter with the perfect future. What she'd never understood was that real success wasn't about who you knew. It was about what you could create. Final test complete, Jake announced, his voice tired but excited. Emma, you need to see these results. I walked over to his station, where performance metrics scrolled across the screen. Our security software had just blocked every single attempted breach, adapting and learning in real time. It was exactly what my father had theorized was possible, years before anyone else had thought of it. We did it, I whispered, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. It actually works. Your dad would be proud, he said quietly. You know that, right? I nodded, thinking of the leather-bound notebook I kept in my desk drawer. My father's last project, filled with his ideas and theories, the same theories I'd used as the foundation for our software. Friday evening arrived too quickly. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple black dress that looked modest but cost more than Ashley's monthly shopping allowance, another detail my family didn't know about my success. La Maison was packed when I arrived, but I spotted our party easily. Ashley held court at the center of the table, wearing a designer dress that I'm sure she charged to my mother's credit card. The dean sat beside her, looking appropriately impressed as she detailed her plans to revolutionize corporate law. Emma, you're late, my mother hissed as I took my seat. The dean has been here for 15 minutes already. Sorry, work ran long, I said, unfolding my napkin. Important project deadline. Ashley laughed, the sound practiced and perfect. Still at that startup. You know, there's an entry-level position at Dad's firm if you want a real job. My stepfather, Richard, nodded encouragingly. It's time to think about your future, Emma. You can't play around with computers forever. I took a sip of water, letting their condescension wash over me. Actually, I've been meaning to tell you all about my work. We're having a demonstration next week. I'd love for you to come. Oh, honey, my mother said, patting my hand. We're also busy with Ashley's Harvard preparations. Maybe another time. It's a pretty important demonstration, I pressed. We're meeting with some major investors. I think you find it interesting. The dean perked up at this. What kind of technology are you working with? Before I could answer, Ashley cut in. It's just some little app thing. Nothing like the cases I'll be working on at Harvard. Did Mom tell you I got the highest LSAT score in the state? Dinner continued like this, with Ashley dominating the conversation and my mother beaming proudly. I stayed quiet, eating my overpriced salmon and thinking about the next week's demonstration. As dessert arrived, Ashley tapped her glass with her spoon. I'd like to make a toast, she announced, to my amazing mother, who has always supported my dreams, who knew exactly what I needed to succeed, even when it meant making tough decisions. Without her believing in me, and without that college fund, none of this would be possible. Everyone raised their glasses. I did too, but my mind was already on Tuesday's presentation. Will you at least try to look happy for your sister? My mother whispered as we left the restaurant. This is a huge achievement. I turned to face her, maintaining my calm smile. I am happy, Mom. In fact, I can't wait to show you just how happy I am at next week's demonstration. You'll be there, right? Both of you. Something in my tone must have unsettled her because she hesitated before nodding. I suppose we could stop by, if it means that much to you. It does, I said, checking my phone as a text from Jake came through. Investors confirmed. All systems go. Perfect, I replied, then looked back at my mother and Ashley. Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'll send you the details. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. As I drove home, I thought about my father's words from years ago. Success isn't about proving others wrong, Emmy. It's about proving yourself right. Tuesday would prove us both right, and no amount of stolen college funds could stop what was coming. Tuesday arrived with a kind of crisp autumn clarity that made everything feel possible. Our office, usually a casual space filled with programmers in hoodies and jeans, had been transformed into something that would impress even my status-conscious family. The conference room gleamed with fresh flowers and sleek technology displays, while our prototype sat innocently on the main presentation table. The guest list was impressive. Representatives from major tech companies, venture capitalists, and several prominent cybersecurity firms. But the two names I cared most about were my mother and Ashley, scheduled to arrive at 1:45 p.m. "They're here," Jake announced, peeking through the blinds. "Your mom's wearing what looks like half of Gucci's fall collection, and Ashley's got that future lawyer power suit on." I smoothed down my own outfit, a custom-tailored suit that cost more than Ashley's entire Harvard wardrobe. Perfect timing. Let's give them the welcome they deserve. When they walked in, their expressions were exactly what I'd expected, polite disinterest masked by social obligation. But I noticed their eyes widening as they took in the prestigious crowd, the elegant setup, and the obvious signs that this was more than just some little app thing. "Emma," my mother said, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "This is quite something. When you said demonstration, we thought that it would be in someone's garage." I finished for her, enjoying the flush that crept up her neck. "Please take your seats. We're about to begin." Ashley grabbed my arm as I turned away. "What's going on? Why are there Fortune 500 executives here?" I gently removed her hand. "You'll see. After all, you're both so interested in supporting dreams, aren't you?" The presentation began exactly at 2 p.m. Jake handled the introduction, outlining the growing crisis in cybersecurity and the billions lost annually to data breaches. Then it was my turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing before the crowd. 2 years ago, my father, David Mitchell, passed away. He was a brilliant software engineer who left behind two things: a college fund for his daughter's future and a notebook full of revolutionary ideas about adaptive security protocols. I paused, watching my mother's face pale as understanding began to dawn. That college fund was recently redistributed without my knowledge or consent. But what the people who took it didn't know was that I'd already invested it in something far more valuable than a law degree. The prototype hummed to life behind me, screens displaying real-time defense against simulated cyber attacks. What you're watching is the world's first truly adaptive security system, built on my father's theoretical framework and developed over the past 2 years by our team. We call it the Mitchell Protocol. The next 30 minutes were a blur of technical demonstrations, impressed murmurs, and furious note-taking from the investors. Through it all, I kept catching glimpses of my mother and Ashley, their faces growing increasingly ashen as they realized what they'd done. As I concluded the presentation, I saved the best for last. We're pleased to announce that initial bids for the Mitchell Protocol start at $300 million, with several major tech companies already expressing interest. The room erupted in applause. Investors immediately began clustering around Jake and me, cards being pressed into our hands, voices competing to be heard. But I kept my attention on my family. My mother stood frozen, her designer purse clutched tight against her chest. Ashley's perfect composure had cracked, her mouth hanging slightly open as she calculated exactly how much she lost by taking my college fund. When the crowd finally thinned, they approached me. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "Emma, sweetheart, we had no idea. If we'd known. If you'd known it was worth millions, you wouldn't have stolen it." I finished for her. "That's exactly the point, Mom. You never bothered to know anything about my work, my dreams, or what Dad was trying to build for my future." "We can fix this," Ashley cut in, her lawyer-to-be mind already spinning. "The money, we can give it back. We'll figure something out with Harvard." I laughed, the sound drawing attention from nearby investors. "Give it back? Oh, Ashley, you don't understand. I don't need that money anymore. What I needed was to show you both exactly what you threw away. Not just the funds, but the chance to be part of something revolutionary." "But we're family," my mother pleaded. "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't dismiss dreams as playing around with computers. And family certainly doesn't decide that one child deserves success more than another." I turned to greet another group of investors, then paused to deliver one final message. "Enjoy Harvard, Ashley. I hope that law degree was worth it. Oh, and Mom, Dad would be so disappointed in what you did with his legacy. As I walked away to shake hands with the CEO whose company was worth billions, I heard Ashley burst into tears. But I felt no satisfaction in their pain, only relief that I finally broken free from their narrow vision of success.